Welcome to what would be one of the longest video that I'm ever going to record onto my channel, as I am actually going to combine both part 1 and part 2 of the review of this weekend's action into a single video. And the reason why I'm doing this is because yesterday I was supposed to do part 1 of the review, but since I had some technical difficulty with the laptop that I am recording this video, and that today I temporarily have fixed the issue, although I'm still going to have to bring it to the shop later this afternoon to see what is going on. That's why I am going to just combining the review into 2 parts, and that, yeah, this is going to be most likely a video that's going to longer than an hour, and it's going to be one, if not the longest video that I am, of course, going to do. But sit back and relax, get your popcorn if you need it, because we are about to dive in terms of the 11 games that happened during this weekend's action. And you notice I said 11 games and not 13. The reason why that is the case is because there's 2 games that got postponed, or one of them got postponed, and one of them is actually now being canceled and not being made up later this year. And it's just happened to be so that both of those games that were not played this weekend has to involve with both of my favorite team, as the game that of course is going to be postponed is the LAFC versus San Jose Earthquakes matchup. And that one, I mean, I kind of mentioned it back on Friday, where I won't be surprised if that game is going to be postponed, since we heard news coming out of the LAFC camp on Friday that 3 of their players have got tested positive for COVID-19. And when you have that many cases of positive, yeah, most likely that game is not going to be played. And therefore, it was the case where now, there's still no announcement of when they're going to make up that game, but most likely it's either going to be tomorrow or Wednesday, since those are really the 2 only day to make up these games that are basically being postponed because of players getting tested positive for COVID-19. Before we of course get into decision day, where that's after decision day, I don't think the league is even thinking about trying to make up games after that. But the other game that of course that did not play and ultimately was actually canceled outright is the Minnesota versus Sporting KC game, where on Saturday it was emerged from the Minnesota camp that there were a couple of players that once again tested positive for COVID-19, and because of that, the league decided to make a relatively tough decision to cancel the game outright. And the reason why that game is not going to be made up is because Minnesota already have a game that they got postponed earlier this season because of the same reason against the Chicago Fire that has to be made up on Wednesday, and there was just no other day in terms of them trying to make up that game, and therefore they decided to just cancel that game outright, and once again add to the list of teams in the Western Conference that is not going to play every single game, and continue to add ongoing criticism in terms of the points per game system. Like, I understand the points per game system is definitely unfair, and there's definitely a lot of people that are not happy about it, but at the end of the day, I really don't see a better alternative in terms of this situation that makes the system a little bit more fair, and that we're living in a world in 2020 where things are just kind of unfair, and that it's only fitting the fact that unfortunately we have to end the regular season and playoffs is going to be determined in such an unfair way. That is the points per game system, but hopefully this will be the last time we, of course, have to worry about this, and that next year, hopefully things are going to return a little bit normal, and we don't have to deal with this uncertainty of a shortened season, and also points per game that is really going to determine whether you make the playoffs or you're out of the playoffs. But either way, let us actually get into the first game after my little spiel that I had. And the first game out of this 11-game action I'm going to talk about is none other than the Texas Derby. Now, for the past couple of Texas Derby, it's usually gone 2 ways. Either it's going to end in a draw between Dallas and Houston, or one of these teams is going to absolutely steamroll the other team and put a crooked number on the scoreboard. And while Dallas definitely steamrolled Houston in this one, and that despite the fact they didn't put a crooked number in this game, they probably could have if they were just a little bit better in terms of their finishing. And Marco Maric was really one of the bigger reason why Houston did not give up more than just the 3 goals that they gave up in this game. Because if it wasn't for him, this probably would have been 5 or 6-0 in favor of FC Dallas. And early on in this game, you can definitely saw the dominance of Dallas as in the second minute, Jara probably should have scored for about 9 yards out, as he had a very good look toward goal. And that when you're a number 9 and you have a good look like that, yeah, you got to put that one at least on target, or even put that one into the back of the net. But unfortunately, he couldn't do that. Just 7 minutes later, he had another chance from 14 yards out, but this time Marko Maric was able to deny him. But it looked like Dallas was all over Houston, and it was just a matter of time before Dallas was going to get that goal that they deserved for their early dominance, and they did. In the 19th minute, Franco Jara scores from Barrios and Pico to make it 1-0 in favor of Dallas, before Pico himself would get on the score sheet from Ricarte to make it 2-0 in favor of Dallas. And after that, I thought this was going to get ugly in this Texas derby, and this is going to be one of those Texas derby where it's going to be relatively one-sided. But Houston, they kind of started to come back into this game right about the half-hour mark. Lassiter probably should have scored from about 20 yards out because he had a relatively good look at it, but Jimmy Maurer was able to deny him to that, and that was really probably the most difficult save that Jimmy Maurer had to make in this game, because Houston was relatively quiet on the attacking end. And even though they were trying their best to come back into this game and try to at least get one back into this one, they was just very poor in the final third, and Dallas was relatively comfortable in terms of trying to defend Houston every time they tried to go on the attacking end and try to get a goal back. Now, in the second half, Dallas basically reclaimed that control that they kind of lost during the half-hour mark, and that Maric had to once again come up big to deny Ricarte. Ricarte is probably one of the most unluckiest man during this game, as he clearly should have at least had a goal in this one. Like, he had, 5-6 chances to bury a goal, and that this one, of course, while it was saved from Maric, he actually later on had a really bad miss that probably should have been 9 out of the 10 times put into the back of the net. But first, in the 50th minute, Jara had another chance to double his tally for this game, but unfortunately he's just missed wide of the net as he went through on goal. And this is where we, of course, get to the bad miss from Ricarte, where Ricarte was wide open in the box, 14 yards out. Well, 13 yards out to be exact. All he needs to do is basically puts it into the back of the net, and I don't know what just happened in this sequence, but I think he probably shanked the ball, the fact that he basically just hit it way wide like that. Like, obviously, when you're that open like that and you hit it way wide like that, not only it's a bad miss, but he clearly probably shanked that one with the way that he was trying to aim target, because that clearly should have been 3-0 in favor of Dallas. And he also had another chance in the 71st minute, but this time Maric was able to deny him to keep this one at 2-0. But I also thought Houston looked down and out at that point. Like, the way that they were giving chances for Dallas and kind of inviting pressure for them to eventually get this third goal, I just don't see how they're going to potentially get that next goal to kind of come back into this game. And just as I talked about how Dallas was eventually going to get that third goal, they would eventually get it in the 93rd minute, when Fafa Pico pretty much put the cherry on the top for Dallas in this Texas derby to make it 3-0 in favor of them. And that would be the final score of this game, as the shots in this game, both teams might have 14 shots in this game, but the shots on goal basically tells the story. 9 shots on goal compared to just 2 that Houston had. 4 shots off target compared to 7 that Houston has. 1 shot that was blocked compared to 5 that the Dynamo has. And possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession. And with this loss for the Houston Dynamo, they officially are eliminated from the playoffs and become the first team to be eliminated from the playoffs, which I'm pretty sure Dynamo fans realized it was going to happen. Like, especially how bad this run has been, where they only got 1 win out of the last 13 games. It was bound that is kind of a form, especially in this shortened season, where you're not going to make the playoffs if you go on that bad of a run. And therefore, this Saturday was the day that pretty much confirmed that they are not going to make the playoffs and they're getting eliminated. But in some way, I think Dynamo fans will be very frustrated that, if they're going to get eliminated, they're going to be frustrated that they got eliminated in the hands of their hated rival FC Dallas. And especially, it was also a game where Dallas, on the other hand, they clinched playoffs with this 3-0 win against the Houston Dynamo. And this was relatively one of the more comfortable games for Dallas that they have this season, which that has to frustrate Houston and Tab Ramos with the way that in a big rivalry game like that, and you basically let the opponent just kind of stroll around and not even get into second or third gear like that. Yeah, that has to be just a very frustrating way to really confirm elimination. And that I really think this offseason they got a lot of things to change, and definitely they're going through a rebuilding stage now with the way how bad this team has gone throughout this season. But moving on, in terms of the very next match, is Nashville versus Chicago. So the good news for the Chicago Fire is that with them getting a point in this game, and the fact that most of their team around them that is chasing for their playoff spot lost this weekend, this means that they are still above the red line right now, and they're still not only in the driving seat, but also have that game in hand have that game in hand against Minnesota on Wednesday. That hopefully that game, of course, would be played. But the bad news for Chicago is that, yeah, this is a game that they should have won. Like, especially in the second half, how they pretty much took control of this game. Fire fan will be frustrated. The fact that this was another one of those typical games where the Fire didn't take advantage of their opportunity, and it cost them 2 points in this one. But in the first half, and the first thing I want to talk about is none other than the pitch at Nissan Stadium. So you know how last time I talked about the pitch at Nissan Stadium and how it was just god-awful with the way that the American football line was overlapping the soccer line on the pitch at Nissan Stadium, and it just made it look like that game was something out of the 90s or even in the early 2000s of MLS, when that was a huge issue. And it's kind of frustrated to see 25 years on into this league, we're still having the same issue to this day. Well, this time the pitch was probably even more uglier and probably even worse than last time, and that I guess the grounds crew tried their best in terms of hiding those American soccer line, but whatever they decided to do, they think that just putting a bunch of slab of grass all over the pitch is going to be a way to basically fix it. I mean, it's almost like they put a bunch of grass slab in a way to kind of fit this puzzle of actually making a soccer pitch, but instead it just looked ugly to see on the broadcast. And that, yeah, I do feel bad for Nashville, the fact that, they're really trying to challenge the Quakes in terms of who actually has the worst pitch in MLS. Although I'll still give the Quakes that advantage because, when you look at the pitch between Nissan Stadium and at the Quake Stadium, both of them are very bad, but at least at the Quake Stadium, that one is extra worse because players actually just slip around, and that pitch is like an ice rink with the way that players, if you try to make a cut on that pitch, you are automatically gonna go down and wipe the deck. Whereas in this game, I didn't see a lot of players that actually slip on that pitch, despite the fact that there was definitely a lot of divots, and you can clearly see that they just look like glue a bunch of grass slab onto the pitch and hope that of course is the way to go. But either way, getting back into this game, Nashville actually had the first chance in the 10th minute when Alex Muro had a free header that just missed high of the net. Nashville was definitely going with their traditional low block on Chicago, and that, this is kind of something that they always do all this season, which is try to suffocate teams and try to make it get extremely hard in terms of breaking down the defense. And throughout this year, it's been very successful and is one of the biggest reasons why they are in the playoffs this season. And the Fire become one of the many teams that just struggle in terms of dealing that very rigid kind of back line. And then just as we reach the half-hour mark in this game, Nashville would take the lead, and it would be Rios that scored from Leao and Zimmerman to give them a 1-0 lead. This was really a classic Nashville goal with the way that the ball was coming in from Leao, and it kind of created a little bit of a chaos in the box, which Rios was able to put away after that kind of chaos that happened in the box. But yeah, it's a very typical Nashville kind of goal where they're able to score from a ball coming into the box. And while it might not be the prettiest goal that they of course score, and the prettiest goal you ever seen in MLS, it's effective in a way that they of course got a crucial 1-0 lead. And when you gave a 1-0 lead to Nashville, yeah, that could be a little bit of a problem, and it's very troubling the fact that you're going to find a way to get the equalizer. But credit to Chicago, they did eventually find a way to penetrate that Nashville back line, and that they kind of did it the first time at the half-hour mark when Willis was able to deny Frankowski in the back post. But ultimately, they did break them down in the 41st minute when Boris Sekulic scores from Pineda to make it 2-1, or not make it 2-1, but tie the game up at 1 apiece. And this was a great ball for Pineda to pretty much puts it over the top of the Nashville defense, and Sekulic with a very clean finish to tie the game up at 1 apiece as we head into halftime. All square and definitely all to play for in this game. Although in the second half, you can clearly see that goal that that the Fire scored right on the stroke of halftime carried the momentum into the second half, because in the second half, yeah, Chicago was in complete control of the game. And how Nashville, despite the fact that they were continued to go with their traditional low block, the struggle that they had in the second half was that they just could not maintain any possession and cannot play it out of the back like they did back in the first half, and that the Fire just not allowing them to get past even into their own half. And that as the game continued to go on, you can definitely see Chicago was getting closer and closer in terms of breaking down this Nashville back line, and that in the last 10 minutes they really throw the kitchen sink at Nashville, and that was kind of the time where it was all hands on deck for Nashville to try to hold on to this 1-1 draw. Elliot Collier came the closest in the 87th minute by hitting the post, but ultimately Nashville was able to hold on to this 1-1 draw, as the Fire just could not find a way to get that crucial goal that would have won the game for them in this one. But the shots in this one, 12 shots compared to 10 that Nashville has, 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that Nashville has, 4 shots off target compared to 6 that Nashville has. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked, and possession-wise, 37% possession compared to 63% possession that the Chicago Fire has. And again, despite the fact that Fire fans are going to be frustrated the fact that they weren't able to get all 3 points in this one to even improve their chances of making the playoffs, they're still in a very good spot right now with the way that all the other team around them lost, and the fact that they're still above the red line with that game in hand that they will be hopefully playing against Minnesota on Wednesday. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Columbus and the Philadelphia Union, and the Crew absolutely stole this one. And the player that was responsible in terms of stealing this win for the Columbus Crew is none other than Eloy Rome, because he basically decided to channel his Andre Blake in this game against, ironically, the team that had Andre Blake, but unfortunately he was not available to play for the Union because of an injury that he suffered, and that he absolutely stole the show and just completely frustrated the Union in this game, despite the fact that they were putting kind of a firing squad in front of him. And in the first half, in the 8th minute of this game, the Union had their first of what would be many chances that they had. Although this one, they didn't really kind of create it, but more like Columbus kind of got away with a very bad defensive error. As Mensah, as he was trying to clear the ball away, it actually ricocheted right off of Shibilko. That actually redirect right toward goal, but somehow, in some way, Room with some cat-like reflexes to prevent that from going in and prevent the Columbus Crew to probably go down 1-0 in one of the worst way you could concede a goal in this game. Now, just 8 minutes later, Shibilko had another chance. This time he had an 18-yard shot that just went wide, but you can definitely see the Union was by far the better side, and they were the one that was dictating the play in this one. But Eloy Rome, he was also a goalkeeper that little do we know would just be not allowing anything from open play whatsoever, because in the 27th minute, Room would be able to rob Mebezo as he he basically fingertipped that one on to the post, and that was one of the many big save that he would make during this game. And just as the Union thought that they were getting closer and closer in terms of maybe getting that first goal, Columbus basically scored. And they scored in the 37th minute when Artur was able to drive a low shot that ends up into the back of the net from long range from Affo. And you know how I talked about the fact that the Union did not have Andre Blake in this game and that Joe Bendik had to step in? Yeah, Bendik kind of had a bit of a nightmare night, as this was one of the two goals that, this one I feel like he definitely could have done better. And if Andre Blake was actually in goal for this shot, he probably would have saved this one, with the way that it seemed like Bendik kind of reacted to this shot a little bit late, and that he kind of dived to try to make the save a little bit late, and because of that he wasn't able to get it, and it ends up into the back of the net. And that in some way that was kind of against the run of plays, with the way that the Union was just completely dominating the game up until that point. But Columbus will be happy the fact that they were able to be up 1-0 despite the fact that they were looking second best in the game. Now, in the second half, the Union continued to try to search for that first goal and now look for the equalizer. Shibilko basically hits the post in the 47th minute and came very close to doing so. Before Jerzy Zardes, I'm not sure did he know a lot about this, but the ball was coming into the box and it kind of ricocheted off his body, and it actually almost ricocheted off his body and ends up into the back of the net and give the Crew a 2-0 lead. But thankfully for the Union, that didn't happen, as it actually ricocheted just wide off the post. And as I mentioned, after all the pressure that the Union has, it has to be frustrated, the fact that they almost were on verge of potentially going 2-0 down, and that it just feel like maybe this is one of those days that they're not going to get that goal. Well, they were handed a lifeline in the 57th minute when Jonathan Mensah basically brought down Sergio Santos in the box. Mensah had an absolute nightmare of a game in this one, dealing with this Union attack, and probably had the worst game this season with the Columbus Crew, as he made a very silly foul by bringing down Santos in the box, which Montero was able to take advantage of getting, of putting away that penalty. And just like that, the Union got their deserved goal that they've been searching for throughout this game. And as soon as they got that equalizer, I kind of fear for Columbus, knowing the fact that this is probably when the Union is going to continue to push, and that they're eventually going to get that second goal. But Eloy Rome apparently didn't get that memo, because he would continue to make some big save, first denying Elliott from long range in the 58th minute, before denying Santos a chance to score in the 59th minute in the front post. But then Santos himself had a big chance to tap it in from about 4 yards out, but unfortunately he wasn't able to put away. And as the longer this game kind of continues to be 1-1, I kind of feel like it started to get into the Union players' heads. Like they kind of feel like this is just going to be one of those games where nothing is going to go right for them in terms of their finishing, and that the opposition goalkeeper is kind of started to get into their heads. And I think for Columbus and their players probably feel like, hey, our goalkeeper is definitely on fire right now. Maybe this is one of those games where we can actually steal it, despite the fact that we look second best throughout the game. And you would be right by that, because in the 84th minute, they got that second goal to steal all 3 points in this game. And it would be Namath, the one that just came on to the pitch and as a substitute just 41 seconds, that would score the eventual winning goal from Luis Diaz. But yeah, this was a really bad mistake once again from Bendik, and in some way this was even worse than the one that he gave up earlier, because he completely misjudged this cross from Diaz, and because of that it basically fell into Namath in the back post, who basically said, thank you very much for misjudging that cross, because I'm just going to easily slot this one into the back of the net from 4 yards out. And just like that, Columbus had a 2-1 lead. And that, for the last couple of minutes, the Union, they definitely were a little bit frustrated, and that, it could have been easy for the Union to just kind of lie down and just kind of feel like this is just not going to be the day. But they continue to try to attack, and in the 88th minute, they thought surely they got the equalizer in that Shabilko header, but unfortunately, despite the fact that that header was put in a perfect place, Eloy Rome with an absolute incredible save, definitely on point of save of the week for this match week, to parry that one away and denying the Union a chance to get that second goal. Before, in stoppage time, he would be robbing Elliott from close range and preventing the Union to get that second goal. And in the end, Columbus able to hold on to a 2-1 win in this one, as the shots in this one, 22 shots compared to 7 that the Crew has, 3 shots on goal compared to 9 that the Union has, 3 shots off target compared to 7 that the Union has, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 6 that the Union has, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession that the Union had in this game. But for the Union, this was a huge missed opportunity to clinch the Supporters' Shield, and that this is, once again, another situation where the Union was just just doorstep away in terms of clinching their first title, though, in terms of their Supporters' Shield and getting their first trophy in club history, and they basically let this one slip away. And because of the fact that Toronto is able to win their game this week, this means that the Supporters' Shield is going to come down to the final day, and that for the Union, even though they're still in the driver's seat because they currently have the tiebreaker over TFC, despite the fact that the standing is all deadlocked right now, if they don't win that game, and that if they get a draw or a loss next week against New England at home, and that TFC is able to get a victory, yeah, that means that the Shield is now going to go to TFC. And after that 5-0 result that the Union was able to put against TFC, and also of how much TFC has been struggling lately, you would have thought that the Supporters' Shield was done and dusted, isn't it? And that if the Union are not going to be able to win it, this might be one of the worst collapse we have seen from a team that is just on the doorstep of winning the Supporters' Shield, and yet again they weren't able to get it because they basically collapsed late with a couple of key losses, and the other team that is chasing them for the Supporters' Shield is able to get key wins in terms of stealing that Supporters' Shield away. So yeah, for the Union, they are really hoping that is not going to be the case heading into the final day of this weekend on Decision Day. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than the Elimination Derby, Eastern Conference version, as this game between Atlanta versus FC Cincinnati, we knew that the loser of this team is potentially going to get eliminated, and that was the case with FC Cincinnati on the losing end in this one, meaning that they are, of course, officially eliminated into the playoffs. And early on in this game, you can kind of sense that FC Cincinnati looked like they were pretty much down and out, and Atlanta, they looked like they come into this game and was ready to try to score a couple of goals in a way to keep themselves relevant in this playoff contention in the Eastern Conference. Because in the first half, just 8 minutes in, Adam John is able to score from Jurgen Damm to give Atlanta a 1-0 lead before Waston basically brought down Gallagher in the box very clumsily. Penalty for Atlanta, which Marcelino Moreno was able to put away the penalty and score his first ever goal in MLS with this penalty. And just like that, Atlanta find themselves 2-0 up, and I just thought, yeah, that is pretty much game, set, and match, because I just don't see how Cincinnati is able to try to come back in this game with the way that they're down 2-0. But they did start to kind of try near the end of the first half, and that Guzan actually had to make a couple of decent saves to keep this one at 2-0. First, he was able to rob Vasquez in the 43rd minute. Before on the 3rd minutes of stoppage time, he was able to deny Patterson, who had a free header into the box, but didn't really find a lot of power to really trouble Guzan. And that even though Cincinnati was looking to try to get one back, they couldn't quite do that, and we had to halftime 2-0 in favor of Atlanta. Now, in the second half, you can see that Atlanta, they pretty much started to just feel like this 2-0 was enough for them to get all 3 points. So they shut down shop and started to sit deep and give Cincinnati all the possession. And we know that Cincinnati, when they get all the possession, they find it even harder to try to find attacking option than when they're trying to go on the transition and trying to score goals from the set piece. And that as the game continued to go on, it was actually looked like Atlanta the one that was more threatening to score the next goal. As in the 68th minute, they almost did it with Richie able to deny Barco a chance to make it 3-0 before Cubo Torres couldn't quite put away a sitter for about 4 yards out and couldn't quite tap it in the 88th minute. But ultimately, Atlanta does able to get the 2-0 victory and comfortably able to hold on against an FC Cincinnati side that basically provide no pressure against Atlanta, despite the fact that they had all the possession and at times looked control in this game in the second half. The shots in this one, 14 shots compared to 8 that Atlanta has. Both teams had 4 shots on goal. 3 shots off target compared to 6 that FC Cincinnati has. 1 shot that was blocked compared to 4 that Cincinnati has. And possession-wise, 42% possession compared to 58% possession. And again, with this loss, FC Cincinnati basically is eliminated from the playoffs and pretty much also confirmed that they are going to win the wooden spoon for the second year in a row, which I guess if you're Cincinnati fans, you're probably happy the fact that you won the wooden spoon again, and that this season is pretty much now over, and that they of course got themselves eliminated, because yeah, this was just another miserable season for FC Cincinnati, and that there's no doubt this offseason there's going to be a lot that is changed, not just the fact that they're going to have to blow it up again in terms of their squad and trying to go to their rebuild to restructure their squad, but I feel like there's going to be some people in that front office for Cincinnati that is probably going to have to get fired with the way that how bad this team has looked in their first two year in MLS. But as for Atlanta, they're probably the biggest winner in terms of the playoff race in the Eastern Conference, because they were the only team out of the bottom 6 in the Eastern Conference and those 6 teams that is battling for the last 2 spots of the playoffs that actually won this weekend. And because of that, they are definitely well and truly alive in the playoff race, and definitely one of those 6 teams that is going to try to battle for those 2 spots heading into decision day. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than the New York Derby. And you know how the New York Derby last time of how the Red Bulls were able to win 1-0, and that I said that was probably the worst Hudson River Derby I have ever seen out of this fixture, with the way that goal that the Red Bulls scored was incredibly lucky, and that was also a game where pretty much nothing actually happened in that one. Well, in this New York Derby, that basically made up for that bad one that we had earlier this season back in September, because this was the complete opposite in terms of excitement in this derby, where it was for a while looked like it was a slugfest between both of these teams that was trading goals left and right, and ultimately NYCFC did kind of pull away of this game late in this one to claim a big emphatic 5-2 win over their intercity rival New York Red Bulls. But the first thing I want to mention is the camera angle again. And I know Yankee Stadium, the camera angle is obviously among one of the worst in the league, but this camera angle that they put was probably the worst one I've seen out of all those bad camera angle that I see whenever a game is taking place at Yankee Stadium, because for whatever reason, I'm not sure if the camera operator was even in the stadium, or is he still broadcasting this game from Red Bull Arena or from New Jersey, because the way that the camera angle was so zoom out, like I just don't understand why is it like that, and that why in the world can you not just like zoom in a little bit to kind of see the action and whatsoever. I mean, in some way you could also say that kind of maybe it's just them trying to give you a true experience of what it's like to watch a game at Yankee Stadium, where you're just so far from the action that the players are kind of like ants with the way that you're actually watching them play at the stadium. But other than that, that was just absolutely awful camera angle, and I hope I don't see that again if there is going to be another game that is going to be taking place at Yankee Stadium. But going back to the game itself, the fireworks all started in the 12th minute when Castellanos was able to score from Maxi Morales to give NYCFC a 1-0 lead. And I thought that was a well-deserved lead because I thought NYCFC looked like the better side early on. But the Red Bulls were able to equalize just 6 minutes later as Brian White was able to tie the game up at 1 apiece at that point. And in some way, I would say that that was kind of a little against the run of play with the way that NYCFC had some chances to maybe make it 2-0. They definitely had chances to retake the lead with a chance in the 29th minute when Medina, of course, hit the post from a tight angle, and that they had numerous chances to try to retake the lead. But ultimately, it was the Red Bulls, the one that once again was able to score against the run of play, and they did that in the 38th minute when Casillas Jr., who I think he probably scored a relatively lucky goal with the way that this one took a wicked deflection off of Chanel and somehow ends up into the back of the net. But either way, the Red Bulls won't care because they're 2-1 up in this Hudson River Derby, although that lead barely lasts 4 minutes before NYCFC, where unlike how the Union was frustrated the fact that they weren't able to take advantage of their chances despite the fact that they were the better team, NYCFC was making sure that that is not the case for them because they immediately equalized from Mackay Stevens and Castellanos in the 42nd minute before Castellanos had a chance to give the lead in the 45th minute and actually did look like he got the lead for NYCFC on the stroke of halftime by bury that one into the back of the net, but unfortunately he was in an offside position as he was going through on goal, and therefore that goal of course was disallowed, and it was still 2-2 as we head into halftime. Now in the second half, NYCFC wastes no time to make amends of the goal that they got disallowed and took the lead for good, as in the 50th minute, Ring was able to score from Castellanos, and there's no doubt that this is going to be in contention of goal of the week and maybe even win goal of the week with the way that Alex Ring absolutely hit a banger from outside the box and pretty much puts it perfectly in the top left corner to give NYCFC the lead back in this one. Although the Red Bulls themselves, they were looking to try to equalize again and try to do it for the second time, as Valet actually had a chance that just missed wide from close range in the 57th minute. Before on the other end, Mara was able to rob Mackay Stevens from close range, and the game really started to kind of open up, and it was kind of a little bit end-to-end action. And I also kind of wrote there was going to be more goals in this game with the way that it was so open up and so end-to-end, and that this is either going to be the Red Bulls potentially equalize for the third time, or NYCFC was going to get that fourth goal, which it happened in the 76th minute, as Castellanos would score his second goal in the 76th minute to make it 4-2 in favor of NYCFC before he would complete his hat trick in the 84th minute from the penalty spot to basically complete a career day for Tati Castellanos, and I believe only become the second player ever in the New York Derby, joining David Villa as the only one to get a hat trick in this fixture. And yeah, that of course was the final score of this game, as NYCFC able to win 5-2 in this one. Shots in this one, 18 shots compared to 11 that the Red Bulls had, 10 shots on goal compared to 5 that the Red Bulls had, 5 shots off target compared to 4 that the Red Bulls had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Red Bulls had, and possession-wise, 57% possession compared to 43% possession that the Red Bulls had. And that, I know on paper it looked like NYCFC just kind of steamroll the Red Bulls in this game, but I thought there was definitely certain point where the game was very even and that both teams was just going toe to toe on the attacking end. And well, you know, these are kind of a game where if you're a defensive enthusiast, that this is probably a nightmare game for you to watch because there was no defense whatsoever. I just always love these kind of slugfests, especially in these kind of rivalry matchup like that where both teams just don't really care about defense anymore. They're just going to go all out attack, trying to play entertaining soccer and trying to entertain fans in this derby. And as I said, this really made up for what happened earlier this season, where as I said, it was probably one of the worst New York derby I've ever seen, with the way that the Red Bulls got the victory early this season against NYCFC, and in this game, NYCFC was able to get the revenge on their hated intercity rival by getting a big win in this one. But moving on, in terms of the next match, so while the New York Derby was definitely crazy, it was nothing compared to what the next game I'm about to talk about. And, you know, out of all these crazy games that I can see in MLS, this would be the last one. I would thought that there was gonna be a 7-goal thriller and that things would just go completely crazy where no defense once again was being played in this one. Because coming into this game between New England and DC, these are two of the best defensive teams in the league, and these are two teams that don't usually score a lot of goals and that they tend to grind out result and kind of rely on their very sturdy defense. But instead, this game, it was the complete opposite. And I got to give a lot of credit to New England, where there was part of this game I thought they were done and dusted. Although early on, that wasn't the case when I thought they were the better team, at least for the first 20 minutes. Buxaw almost had a chance to make it 1-0 in favor of New England, but unfortunately he wasn't able to score after that shot that McNamara basically took. Well, actually, I'm not sure if it's a shot or a cross, but either way, Buxaw basically kind of redirected, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to redirect that one on target. Before Hamid was able to deny Carlos Hill on the free kick for about 20 yards out after he'd gone with a full stretch dive, but ultimately, it would be DC, the one that would get the opening goal. And it would be Emil Assad that scores from Flores and Reyna to make it 1-0 in favor of DC. Before it would be 2-0 in favor of DC as Griffin Yao was able to get on the score sheet. I thought this might have been an own goal for Henry Kessler because the way that Yao basically strikes this one, it kind of took a wicked deflection off of Kessler, and that it looked like he was trying to clear this one out, but unfortunately puts it into his own net. But apparently they still says that Griffin Yao is credited with that goal, which only tells me that maybe that shot was on target. And when a defender basically puts it into his own net in a shot that is on target, it's not an own goal, with the way that they always will give it to the goal scored. So that, of course, is the case in this one. But yeah, DC were 2-0 up in this game, and I thought New England was in deep trouble, and that I thought that this was pretty much over with the way that DC this season has been very good in terms of holding well, not at least for this season, but more like in these last couple of games where they've been very good in terms of trying to hold on to the league, and 2 goals are usually going to be enough in terms of getting them all 3 points. But instead, New England was given a lifeline in the 28th minute when Canals brought down Buxaw in the box, and Buxaw would actually score this goal after Carlos Hill actually missed a rare penalty and actually puts this one onto the post. But fortunately, when that ball bounced off the post, it came right back into the pass of Buxaw, who basically easily slots it into the empty net to tie or not tie the game, but at least give one back for New England and give them a bit of a lifeline. Now, in the 40th minute, they almost tied the game up, but Hamid was able to rob Buxaw, who was trying to score a tap-in, before he would make another incredible save, probably even better save than the Buxaw save that he made in the 40th minute, by absolutely robbing McNamara. That looked like he put the ball perfectly on the top right corner, but Hamid able to deny him there and preserve DC United lead heading into halftime. Now, in the second half, New England continued to pressure and look to try to get the equalizer, and they got the equalizer in the 54th minute, albeit it is in the expense of the fact that DC, unfortunately themselves, also scored an own goal, with Russell Canals kind of did something similar to what happened earlier in the game when Henry Kessler unfortunately puts it into his own net after Griffin Yao looked like he was just crossing it into the box. But this time Canals was the one that unfortunately trying to clear the ball from the cross, but instead puts it into his own net. And just like that, it was all tied up for New England, and you can see that they were smelling blood in terms of trying to get that third goal, and they did. In the 67th minute, as Bunbury was able to score from Buchanan and Hill to give New England a 3-2 win. And if you're DC United, that has to be very infuriating. The fact that you had a 2-0 lead at that point, and all of a sudden now the game is at 3-2. And is this kind of the time where, yeah, the season looked like is all but gone with this big loss that they suffer against New England? But one thing that I will say about DC, and at least for the last 4 games, is that if you thought that they were dead and buried, think again. They were somehow able to pick themselves up and find a way to score a goal to get themselves back into this game, and most importantly, getting back into the playoff contention. And it looked like that was the case once again, because in the 75th minute, Rivas would score from Flores and Min to give DC the equalizer, and the game were all tied up at 3 apiece. And as we head to the last 15 minutes of this game, you can definitely see both teams were trying to get that winning goal, and ultimately that winning goal came in the 84th minute when Bunbury was able to put away his chance after Hamid did make a decent save originally on Buxa, but unfortunately it bounced right back into Bunbury, who basically easily slots it into the back of the net. And just like that, New England retakes the lead, and this time they would keep the lead for good, as in the end, after a crazy raining night at Gillette Stadium, New England was able to walk away with a 4-3 win against DC. And the shots in this one, 19 shots compared to 7 that DC had, 9 shots on goal compared to 5 that DC had, 5 shots off target compared to none that DC had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that DC had, and possession-wise, 62% possession compared to 38% possession that DC United had in this game. And for New England, this is definitely a big win for them, as because of the fact that the Red Bulls weren't able to get a victory, and Nashville, of course, draw their result. That means that they actually have a little bit of a leeway in terms of getting that 6th and crucial spot in terms of avoiding playing in the play-in round in the Eastern Conference. But as for DC United, I mean, the only good news is the other team around them weren't also able to get resort, but this has to be very demoralizing with the way that you would think when they're up 2-0, they should secure another 3 points, and that if they would have got all 3 points in this game, they would have actually be above the red line right now, and that now they're going to be heading into that final game of the season against Montreal, where I said before that was probably a playoff decider heading into decision day. Looks like it's going to be the case once again, where that is a game that DC absolutely need to win if they want to have a shot in terms of making the playoffs. But that being said, I am now going to switch the board and look at the last 5 games that happened from this weekend's action. So speaking of the DC United versus Montreal game, as I mentioned earlier, Montreal of course lost 1-0 to Orlando City, and I'm just going to quickly talk about the first half, because let's be honest, that first half, yeah, it was one of those first half where pretty much nothing really happened, and there was just no real clear-cut chances from either team. But despite that, there was actually a goal that was scored in the first half, and ironically, that was actually the only goal that was scored in the first half, as Derek DK would score from Perea in the 39th minute to give Orlando City a 1-0 lead. What a pass that was from Perea, that just puts a point-blank pass right into DK, who went through on goal and basically coolly slots it home for what turns out to be the winning goal of this game. But as we head to the second half, this is when the action does start to pick up a little bit. DK had another chance to get his second goal and make it 2-0 in favor of Orlando, but unfortunately he puts his 14-yard shots wide before Montreal started to attack a little bit and getting a couple of chances. Bojan definitely had a big chance for about 24 yards out to basically tie the game up and score another goal also, but unfortunately he puts this one wide before he had another chance in the 66th minute, but this time he missed wide from a 14-yard effort. And knowing the fact that Montreal was kind of getting back into this game, Orlando City kind of feel like that, yeah, they probably need to get the second goal before Montreal is potentially going to get the equalizer. And that Akindele almost looked like he got the second goal and put this game away, but Clementia was able to rob Akindele, who went through on goal, before he would rob Juan after the ball was coming in from close range, and that he basically made a spectacular save to deny Juan a chance to give Orlando a 2-0 lead. But for the last 10 minutes, you can see Montreal was really starting to go all out on attack and try to get that crucial equalizer. And knowing the fact that the other result seems to have gone in favor of them, because this is also around the time they realized DC was down 4-3 against New England and Miami was down 2-1 against Toronto. They knew that if they can get an equalizer, they could definitely give them some leeway in terms of the playoff race. But unfortunately, it didn't happen, because despite the fact that Bojan had another big chance from long range, this time Gallese made a huge save to preserve Orlando the 3 points in this game, and that is how the final action of this game, as Orlando able to squeak out a 1-0 win against Montreal. Shots in this game, 16 shots compared to 9 that Orlando has. Both teams had 5 shots on goal, 4 shots off target for both teams, 7 shots that was blocked compared to none that Orlando has. And possession-wise, 49% possession compared to 51% possession. And yeah, for Montreal, this is definitely a very disappointing result with the way that they had a chance to get some points and take advantage of other team around them, unable to get result. But now they're going to be heading into that final weekend against DC United, where I'm not quite sure would you say that that's a must-win situation for them, because they do have a 2-point lead over DC, but they do only have like a 1-point lead over the likes of Atlanta, Miami, and all these teams that is pretty much in a three-way tie right now for the 11th position. So maybe they need to get a win in that final game, and that is definitely a game, as I said, could really determine who exactly is going to make the playoffs. While for Orlando, they're definitely back into winning ways, 2 wins in a row, and although this was definitely not vintage Orlando City performance, they continue to get points, and in a way where they definitely could clinch a spot in terms of at least having one game at home for the playoffs, if they can win Columbus on Wednesday. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Toronto and Miami. So as I mentioned earlier, TFC was able to take advantage of the Union losing earlier, and now once again is in a deadlock between them and the Union for that Supporters' Shield standings, with a 2-1 win over Inter Miami. And I thought early on in the first half, Toronto had all the possession, and there was one point where TSN basically said that TFC had 78% possession compared to just 22% possession that Miami has. But despite the fact that despite the fact that Toronto had all the possession, they couldn't do anything with it. And then even if there was a couple of half chances for both teams, there wasn't really a breakthrough for the first 40 minutes, and there wasn't really a lot of action, just like how the first half between the Impact and Orlando went. But just like how the Impact and Orlando game went, there was ultimately a goal that was scored in the first half, and it would be Miami, the one that take advantage of a goal with Matuidi scoring in the 42nd minute. I'm not quite sure if this is actually Matuidi's first goal in MLS, because I swear I think he has scored earlier for Miami before. But either way, if that is his first goal, congratulations in terms of him scoring his first ever MLS goal. But yeah, Miami were up 1-0 heading into halftime, definitely have the upper edge. But in the second half, TFC would equalize. And really, the equalizer that they scored from Akinola, Mullins, and Bradley was really the first time they actually looked decent going on the attack, because throughout the entire game they weren't really finding that crucial ball in the final third to get themselves some clear-cut chances. And the goal that they scored was really the first one that they had, and they took advantage of it and ties the game at 1 apiece. Now, just 3 minutes later, Pozuelo almost made it 2-1 in favor of TFC, but unfortunately he missed his shot wide. But you can see TFC was starting to woke up a little bit. And if you're Miami fans, yeah, is this happening again, where they go up 1-0 early in the game, only to give up 2 goals late to lose 2-1 in this one? Well, it looked like they were themselves going to retake the lead in the 79th minute, when Higuain basically put an absolute rocket that struck the post. Before, in the 83rd minute, Miami worst nightmare has come true, because as we've seen before, many of these games where Miami go up 1-0 and then they just blew it by conceding two goals to lose 2-1. It happened again in this one, and this time it was Pozuelo basically puts away the penalty in the 83rd minute. Albeit, this was also a bit of a controversial penalty because there was definitely a question whether or not if Larea did dive and kind of went down way too easily after Sweat looked like made a slight contact on him. And from what I look, I feel like, yes, that penalty was soft. But one thing that makes me feel like that might have been a penalty was Sweat basically had his hands on Larea. And you know, anytime when you're a defender and you put hands on an attacker in the box, you know they're going to go down very easily. I mean, as much as Miami fans will complain about that, that's just the reality it is, and that's why if you're a defender, you just cannot afford to put your hand or even make any slight contact on your attacker because they're going to just go down and try to sell a penalty, which Larea does a good job to do that, and that Pozuelo was able to put away the penalty, and that turns out to be the final action of this game as TFC able to walk out with a 2-1 victory over Miami. Shots in this game, 12 shots compared to 9 that TFC had, 3 shots on goal compared to 2 that TFC had, 5 shots off target compared to 8 that TFC had, or Miami has, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 4 that Miami has, and possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 42% possession. And again, Miami fans are not going to be happy with the penalty that was given against them, but at the end of the day, like I said, if you're a defender and you put hands on an attacker or make slight contact, you're going to be in deep trouble because that attacker usually is going to go down easily and try to sell the penalty. And give credit to Larea in terms of the fact that he does a good job in that, and that able to give TFC a really gritty win to get themselves a big chance of winning the Supporters' Shield heading on to Decision Day. But for Miami, that is a huge blow in terms of their chances of making the playoffs. And while they do have the easiest opponent heading into Decision Day out of the 6 teams that's battling for the last 2 spots, they have to, of course, win that one and really hope that other team can help them out in order to get themselves above the red line again. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the most surprising result of this week, which is Colorado getting a 3-1 upset win against the Seattle Sounders. Although, I will say this, I think Seattle was tired coming into this game. And I don't blame the fact that the Sounders was very tired coming into this game, because this is the 4th game that they're playing in 14 days. And the fact that, you know, when you're tired and you are playing in altitude, that just makes things even harder than when you're actually not playing in altitude. But that being said, I'm pretty sure if you're a Sounders fan, or even Brian Schmitzer, he's not going to say the fact that, you know, we were tired and that's why we didn't show up in this game. This was just a really poor performance from the Seattle Sounders, and probably one, if not the worst performance I think the Sounders have put throughout this year. Because early on in the first half, Shinishiki would score the opening goal in the 11th minute from Sam Vines and Benazet to give Colorado a 1-0 lead. Seattle did equalize just 11 minutes later when Morris was able to score from Rodon and Laerdam. At least early on, I thought it was a relatively pretty even game, but that kind of changed as we get into the second half. And at right on the stroke of halftime, just as we looked like it was going to be a 1-1 tie heading into the second half, Rosenberg scores an absolute banger of a goal to give Colorado a 2-1 lead. And even though I wrote goal of the week with the question mark, you know, there's been a lot of good banger that's been scored this week. That this is definitely going to be really tough to see whether or not if it can maybe win over the banger that we saw earlier well, not earlier this week, but more like the banger that I think Alex Rain scored in that NYCFC game. And then also there was another banger that I forgot who actually scored another banger that can definitely in contention of goal of the week. But either way, it's going to be really tough in terms of that one to be in contention of it, because there's already a lot of bangers that's been scored. But what a good goal that great goal that was from Rosenberg to give Colorado the lead back. And then Seattle looked like they were trying to equalize straight away in the 2nd minute of stoppage time when Yarbrough was able to rob Ruidíaz, who looked like he basically slots it home in the front post, but unfortunately Yarbrough with an incredible save and an incredible reaction to deny him up until that point, as we head into the second half with the Rapids having a 2-1 lead. And in the second half, the Rapids basically took control of the game. Like, if you thought that maybe Seattle was going to try to push for that second goal, yeah, you're wrong. It was the Rapids just kind of took complete control of this game. Fry basically denied Benesse in the 48th minute before he denied Namali's scoring in the 59th minute from a long range. But you kind of saw that Colorado was getting closer to getting that third goal, and that Seattle looked like they were just running out of gas with the way that altitude has really kind of took a toll to this team. Shiki almost made it 3-1 as he went through on goal and probably should have done it, but unfortunately he missed wide. But ultimately, that third and insurance goal came from the Rapids, as Bassett was able to score from Jack Price to make it 3-1, and that was the final score of this game, as the Rapids had 16 shots compared to 9 that the Sounders had. 10 shots on goal compared to 3 that the Sounders had. Both teams had 4 shots off target. Both teams also had 2 shots that was blocked. And possession-wise, 65% possession compared to 35% possession that the Colorado Rapids had in this game. And despite the fact that the Sounders are going to be very tired coming out of this game, there's really no rest for the Sounders team, because they have a midweek game now against a Galaxy team that is fighting for their playoff life. And for the Rapids, this win definitely give them a huge boost in terms of clinching the playoffs, and also further aggregating a lot of people that are right now hating on them because of the fact that their only reason why they're even in this playoff conversation was because of the points per game total. And even though they by far have played the fewest game out of anybody in the league right now, they still somehow will make the playoffs because of the benefit of the doubt of the points per game system. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is Portland versus the Whitecaps. And as a Quakes fan, I want to thank the Timbers for actually helping us out, unlike the other Cascadia rival Seattle Sounders that did not actually help us out whatsoever by getting a win against the Rapids so that we can maintain our 7th position in the playoffs. But thankfully, Portland did do the job. The fact that the Quakes are still able to hang on to that final spot, and definitely does have a leeway in terms of heading into Decision Day, and maybe even heading into the LAFC game where they have a chance to clinch the playoffs. But early on in this game, in the first half, Cavallini had a chance to give the Whitecaps a 1-0 lead, but unfortunately his shot was just fired a little bit wide. Before Portland had a chance just 4 minutes later, but Evan Bush does a great job to deny Mabiel a shot from about 16 yards out. But really, that was kind of the only 2 chances that we had in the first half, or at least for the majority of the first half, because there wasn't really much that happened after that. And then the only other action we had in the first half was Montero tried to chip Clark as he basically came off his lines, but unfortunately Montero clearly chipped this one a little bit too high, and that allowed Chara to basically get back and able to clear that one off the line, and the game remains 0-0 heading into the second half. Now in the second half, Diego Chara, who cleared that one off the line, well, his brother Yimi Chara was able to score the go-ahead goal and ultimately the winning goal of this game when he scored from Villafania to give Portland a 1-0 lead. Though the Whitecaps did have a chance in the 79th minute to tie it with Cavallini shots from close range, but Steve Clark does a good job to deny him. And as Vancouver was kind of pushing for that equalizer, this is definitely nervous time for Timbers fan, because they know that they've seen this story before where they're only 1-0 at home and they're trying to hold on to that 1-0 lead, and yet somehow in some way they gave up a goal late in stoppage time. But fortunately, it did not happen. This time they were able to hold on to that 1-0 lead. But albeit it did kind of come with a bit of a cost, because right into stoppage time, Niezgoda and Valeri basically subbed off with an injury. Valeri probably twisted his ankle with the way that looked like that turf kind of caught his ankle a little bit, and that obviously Timbers fans are hoping that is not really a serious knee injury, because losing Valeri is definitely going to be a huge blow in terms of their chances of making a run into the playoffs. Whereas for Niezgoda, originally when I saw him went down, I thought he could just easily get back on his feet, because definitely didn't look like there was a lot of contact into him. But when the stretcher crew kind of came out and he had to stretcher off, yeah, something kind of went wrong with Niskota, and I have no idea what actually happened that made that injury look very serious. Because again, on the replay, it looked like he basically just made contact very lightly with one of the Whitecaps player and kind of went down on the ground, and you would think he would just get right back on his feet. So yeah, that's definitely a very odd kind of injury, but at the same time, kind of a little bit scary with the way that he had to be stretched all that. So yeah, hopefully the Timbers will find out that it's not really a serious injury. But either way, they are able to get a crucial 3 points and also leapfrog their Cascadia rival Seattle into that second spot. As the shots in this game, 12 shots compared to 11 that Portland has, 3 shots on goal compared to 2 that the Whitecaps had, 3 shots off target compared to 6 that the Whitecaps had, 6 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that the Whitecaps had, and possession-wise, 58% possession compared to 42% possession that the Vancouver Whitecaps had in this game. But moving on into the last game of this weekend's action is none other than the Elimination Derby, the Western Conference version, between the LA Galaxy versus RSL. And just like the Elimination Derby in the Eastern Conference version, the loser of the derby will have to be eliminated. And in this case, RSL is now eliminated in the playoff with this loss against the Galaxy. And that in the first half, 18 minutes in, the Galaxy got the opening goal. And it would be Giancarlo Gonzalez that scores the opening goal from Sebastian Lletget to give them a 1-0 lead. They had a chance to make it 2-0 when Putna was able to rob Yoni Gonzalez from the header. Before, it could have been 2-0 again for the Galaxy, and again Putna had to deny Yoni Gonzalez, this time from the far post, and that RSL, they just cannot get anything going in the first half, and that they are very lucky, the fact that they were only down 1-0 in the first half, because the Galaxy definitely had some real good opportunity to make it 2 or even 3-0 heading into halftime. Now, in the second half, RSL definitely started to get back into this game, and whatever Freddy Corvez said to that team at halftime definitely fired the team up. And they almost got the equalizer in the 50th minute if it wasn't for a heroic defending from Giancarlo Gonzalez. And throughout this season, I have definitely been criticizing this Galaxy defense and talk about how bad this defense throughout this year has been. Well, this game was probably one of their better defensive performances, and this was just a heroic play with looked like for sure Corey Bear was able to chip Bingham and basically puts it into the back of the net to tie the game up. But Gonzalez does a great job to not give up on the play and made a last-ditch kind of clearance, just cleared it off the line to preserve the Galaxy a 1-0 lead. But as I said, RSL will start to get back into this game, and they were maybe trying to get an equalizer soon until the Galaxy eventually doubled that lead when Pavone was able to score from Insu to make it 2-1 in favor of the Galaxy. RSL did get one back in the 80th minute when Martinez was able to score from Justin Merrim and kind of set up a little bit of a tense last 10 minutes of this game. But ultimately, the Galaxy was able to hold on to get a massive 3 points and keep their slim playoff hope alive. As the shots in this game, 8 shots compared to 9 that RSL had, 4 shots on goal compared to 1 that RSL has, 2 shots off target compared to 4 that RSL has, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that RSL had, and possession-wise, 35% possession compared to 65% possession that RSL had throughout this game. And like I said, with this loss, RSL is officially eliminated in the playoffs. And by the way, if you wonder, am I going to start doing the moving forward series again for these teams that is eliminated? Yes, I am going to do the moving forward series soon. I think probably after decision day, I will start doing some of these moving forward series for all these teams that of course got eliminated, and I will take a look of what they need to do in the off season in terms of trying to get themselves back to contention heading into next season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this weekend's action, and I think this video has been almost about 70 minutes long, which was definitely a little bit shorter than I thought it was. I thought this was probably going to be like an 80 or 90 minute video, but either way, if you made it this long, thank you for your support, and certainly you're a very loyal viewer of staying to this point to watch this entire video. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. Tomorrow, I of course will once again start to do the preview for the midweek games and all the makeup games that was postponed because of COVID reason earlier this season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.